Greetings, mortals. Today, we delve into the tumultuous love life of Zeus, the king of the gods, the ruler of Mount Olympus, and let's not forget, the Olympian champion of infidelity. Now, Zeus wasn't known for his subtlety. No, he was more the lightning bolt from the blue type. And we're not just talking about his wrath, but his amorous pursuits as well. You see, Zeus had a bit of a reputation for being a notorious womanizer. The king of the gods was known for his roving eye and his inability to say no to a pretty face. He was, in short, the original playboy, the godfather of all womanizers, and the divine embodiment of the phrase, "love 'em and leave 'em." He was married to Hera, his sister and the queen of the gods. Now, Hera was no pushover. She was a formidable goddess in her own right, with a fierce temper and an unwavering sense of justice. But even she couldn't keep Zeus in check. Despite her best efforts, Zeus's philandering ways continued unchecked, leading to countless affairs and a whole host of offspring. And who were these women who caught Zeus's eye, you might ask? Well, they were a diverse group, to say the least. From mortal women to goddesses, from nymphs to titans, no one was safe from Zeus's amorous advances. And each of these affairs left its mark, not just on the women involved, but also on the world of Greek mythology. But Zeus's love life wasn't all fun and games. There were consequences, as there often are when you're dealing with matters of the heart. And these consequences weren't just felt by Zeus and his lovers, but also by their offspring and the world at large. So buckle up, folks, as we embark on this roller coaster ride of Zeus's romantic misadventures. Trust me, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Zeus's little black book was anything but little, filled with the names of goddesses, mortals, and even a few unfortunate nymphs. Now, let's dive into some of the more renowned names in this infamous book. We'll start with the captivating Io, Europa, and Leda. These ladies and their subsequent offspring form the crux of many a mythological tale, not to mention the punchline for the countless jokes about Zeus's, shall we say, overzealous love life. First up, we have Io, a beautiful mortal priestess of Hera. Oh, the irony. Zeus, clearly not one for discretion, decided to pursue Io right under his wife's nose. To keep their affair a secret, Zeus, in his infinite wisdom, transformed Io into a heifer. Now, if that's not a testament to Zeus's creativity, I don't know what is. But Hera, not one to be easily fooled, demanded the heifer as a gift and set a hundred-eyed giant to watch over her. Io's tale ends with her being chased across the world by a gadfly sent by Hera, eventually reaching Egypt and giving birth to Zeus's son, Epiphus. Talk about a whirlwind romance. Next in line, we have the Phoenician princess, Europa. Zeus, proving yet again that he was not a one-trick pony, transformed himself into a charming bull to woo the unsuspecting Europa. She, enchanted by the gentle creature, climbed onto his back, only to be whisked away across the sea to Crete. There, still in his bovine form, Zeus seduced Europa. This romantic escapade resulted in 3 sons, including Minos, who would later become the famous king of Crete. So at least some good came out of Zeus's inability to keep his, thunderbolt holstered. And then there was Leda. Zeus, never one to shy away from a challenge, decided that turning into a swan would be the most effective way to win over Leda, the queen of Sparta. After their encounter, Leda laid 2 eggs, from which hatched Helen Clytemnestra and the twins Castor and Pollux. Helen's beauty, as we know, would later launch 1,000 ships, leading to the infamous Trojan War. It's safe to say that Zeus's dalliances had far-reaching consequences, way beyond just a few angry wives. But these are just a few of the more well-known ladies in Zeus's little black book. There were many more. Semele, the mortal woman who bore Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, after being seduced by Zeus in mortal form. Danae, who Zeus visited as a shower of gold, talk about golden showers, resulting in the birth of the hero Perseus. And let's not forget Thetis, who Zeus let off the hook after hearing a prophecy that her son would be more powerful than his father. Even Zeus, it seems, knew when to hold him and when to fold him. The tales of Zeus's love affairs are filled with intrigue, deception, and a good dose of creativity. From transforming into animals to showers of gold, it's clear that Zeus was not one to let anything stand in the way of his desires. And while these stories may make for entertaining tales, It's important to remember that they also serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked power and lust. And as for the offspring of these affairs, well, they had their own fates to contend with. Many became great heroes or powerful rulers, their lives forever marked by the circumstances of their birth. Others faced the wrath of Hera, who was never one to let Zeus's infidelities slide. But that's a tale for another time. Zeus's little black book, then, is not just a list of conquests, but a testament to the god's insatiable appetite for love, lust, and power. It's a catalogue of the many lives he touched and often complicated through his affairs. And it's a reminder of the far-reaching consequences of his actions, which often extended far beyond the immediate pleasure of the moment. In the end, Zeus's list of conquests is as diverse and extensive as the pantheon of Greek gods itself. From mortal women to goddesses to nymphs, no one was safe from his advances. And while his methods may have varied, the end result was usually the same: a new addition to his ever-growing list of offspring and another notch on his proverbial bedpost. And that's just the tip of Mount Olympus. Zeus's list of conquests is longer than Hercules' to-do list. Whether you find Zeus's escapades amusing, horrifying, or a bit of both, there's no denying that his love life was anything but boring. From his numerous affairs to his creative methods of seduction, Zeus's love life is an integral part of Greek mythology, serving as a reminder of the god's all-too-human flaws and desires. Now, let's shine the spotlight on the less-known ladies who have had the dubious honor of catching Zeus's roving eye. We've talked about the big names, the ones who made it into the pantheon of Greek mythology's most scandalous love triangles. But what about the women whose stories get lost in the margins? The obscure nymphs, the mortal women, and even a titaness or two who caught Zeus's fancy. Let's dive into these tales of love, lust, and a god who just couldn't keep his thunderbolt in his toga. First we have Aegina, a nymph who was unfortunate enough to become one of Zeus's many conquests. Swept off by the god himself while picking watercress by a river, she was later turned into an island. Yes, you heard it right, an island. If that's not a bizarre twist in a love affair, I don't know what is. It seems Zeus had a knack for turning his lovers into geographical features when he was done with them. Then there's the story of Io, a mortal woman who was turned into a cow. A cow, folks. In an attempt to hide his infidelity from Hera, Zeus transformed the poor woman into a cow. But Hera, ever the suspicious wife, demanded the cow as a gift, making Zeus's attempts to hide his affair utterly moot. Io's story is a testament to Zeus's unique approach to problem-solving. Now let's talk about Elara, another mortal woman who had the misfortune of catching Zeus's eye. To hide his affair from Hera, Zeus hid Elara deep in the earth. This might seem like a safe place, but remember, we're talking about Zeus here. When Elara gave birth to their son, the giant Tityos, she died, unable to survive the birth of such a large baby. Even in the depths of the earth, Zeus's lovers were not safe from his reckless actions. Then, we have the story of Taygete, a nymph who Zeus pursued relentlessly. To escape his advances, Taygete prayed to Artemis, who turned her into a doe. But Zeus wasn't so easily deterred. He pursued and eventually caught Taygete, resulting in the birth of their son, Lacedaemon. The god of thunder certainly had a flair for the dramatic. And let's not forget about Themis, the titaness of divine law and order. Even a titaness was not immune to Zeus's charm. Themis bore Zeus several children, including the Fates and the Seasons. Talk about having a significant impact on the world. And finally we have Alcmene, a mortal woman who gave birth to one of the most famous demigods in history, Hercules. Alcmene was tricked by Zeus, who disguised himself as her husband. The result of this deception was Hercules, a hero known for his strength and his 12 labors. These stories are just a snapshot of Zeus's long list of love affairs. Each woman, whether a nymph, mortal, or titaness, found herself drawn into Zeus's chaotic world. Their fates varied wildly, from being turned into islands and cows to giving birth to heroes and personifications of natural phenomena. It's clear that Zeus had a thing for variety. His lovers came from all walks of life, and their stories are as diverse as they are. His affairs were often marked by deception, transformation, and even tragedy. Yet these women, often overlooked in the grand narrative of Greek mythology, played crucial roles in the mythos, bearing demigods, heroes, and even personifications of natural phenomena. Zeus's inability to keep his thunderbolt in his toga has left us with a rich tapestry of stories. His lovers, the unsung heroines of these tales, endured transformations, deceptions, and the wrath of Hera, all while leaving their mark on the world in their unique ways. So while Zeus may hold the title of King of the Gods, let's remember the women who shaped his narrative and bore the brunt of his indiscretions. These unsung heroines may not have made the headlines, but they certainly made an impression on our Zeus. Zeus may have had his fun, but every party has a cleanup crew. And in this case, the cleanup crew was a very angry Hera. Now, our dear Zeus, the king of the gods, was not exactly known for his fidelity. His romantic escapades were as numerous as the stars in the sky and nearly as varied. But like a child who sneaks a cookie before dinner, Zeus often found himself facing the wrath of his wife, Hera. Hera was not one to sit idly by while her husband frolicked with nymphs and mortals. Oh no, she had a certain flair for dramatic retribution. Each of Zeus's trysts carried a hefty price, often paid by the unsuspecting women and their offspring. Take, for instance, the tale of Leto, a titaness who caught Zeus's eye. When Hera discovered their affair, she forbade Leto from giving birth on any landmass on Earth. Leto, heavily pregnant and desperate, found a loophole in Hera's curse and gave birth on the floating island of Delos, birthing the twins Apollo and Artemis. It's safe to say that Hera was not thrilled about this. Then there was the unfortunate case of Io, a nymph who Zeus transformed into a heifer to hide her from Hera's wrath. But Hera, ever the clever one, saw through Zeus's ruse and demanded the heifer as a gift. Poor Io was then guarded by a 100-eyed giant until she was eventually freed by Hermes. It's a classic tale of you can run but you can't hide, especially when you're a cow being watched by 100 eyes. Zeus's affairs with mortal women often resulted in demigod children, who unsurprisingly also faced Hera's wrath. Hercules, perhaps the most famous of Zeus's offspring, was driven mad by Hera, causing him to kill his wife and children. Talk about a mother-in-law from hell. Yet not all of Zeus's lovers faced such dire fates. Some, like the Pleiades, escaped Hera's wrath by being transformed into doves and then into stars to adorn the night sky. But let's face it, being turned into a bird or a celestial body was probably not on their bucket list when they fell for Zeus. In some cases, Hera's vengeance seemed almost reasonable. Take Semele, for example, a mortal woman who was tricked by Hera into asking Zeus to reveal his true form. As a mortal, Semele was unable to withstand the sight of Zeus's divine form and was incinerated on the spot. A tragic end, but one could argue that Hera was merely teaching her a lesson about the dangers of hubris. However, it's not always so black and white. Hera's wrath was not limited to Zeus's lovers and their offspring. In fact, she was known to punish entire cities and lands associated with Zeus's affairs. The city of Thebes, for instance, was cursed with a plague and a devastating war, all because Zeus couldn't keep his thunderbolt in his toga. It's interesting to note that despite Hera's reputation for vengeance, she often became the stepmother to Zeus's illegitimate children, raising them as her own. This further illustrates the complex and multifaceted nature of Hera, a goddess who was both a wrathful wife and a nurturing mother. Through all this, Zeus seemed to remain blissfully unconcerned about the havoc his affairs wreaked. Perhaps he saw Hera's reactions as just another part of their marital dance. Or maybe he was simply too busy eyeing the next pretty nymph to worry about the consequences of his actions. Whatever the case, Zeus's love affairs resulted in some of the most fascinating and dramatic stories in Greek mythology. So the next time you hear about Zeus's many love affairs, spare a thought for the women and their offspring who bore the brunt of Hera's wrath. And remember, behind every great man is a woman, ready to turn him into a cow if he steps out of line. And thus, Zeus's love affairs often ended with the same refrain: hell hath no fury like a Hera scorned. Zeus, despite his divine status, had one very human flaw: his inability to keep his thunderbolt in his toga. Well, where do we even begin? The king of the gods, the ruler of Mount Olympus, the god of the sky and thunder, yet Zeus seemed to spend less time ruling the universe and more time chasing skirts or togas, as it were. From nymphs to mortals, goddesses to titans, no one was safe from Zeus's roving eye. Now remember that little black book we talked about earlier? Well, it wasn't so little. It was a veritable who's who of ancient Greece, with more than 57 names jotted down. But who's counting, right? Certainly not Zeus. He was the divine embodiment of love, the one you're with. And by with, we mean within a 100-mile radius. His affairs were as numerous as they were diverse. He didn't discriminate, goddess, nymph, mortal. All were fair game. And let's not forget his penchant for disguising himself to carry out these dalliances. A swan, a bull, a shower of gold. Zeus was nothing if not creative in his approach. But every action has its consequences, even for a god. His wife Hera was understandably not thrilled about these escapades, and boy did she have her ways of showing it. From turning his lovers into trees to tormenting their offspring, Hera made it clear that hell hath no fury like a goddess scorned. Yet despite the wrath of his wife, the pleas of his lovers, and the cries of his illegitimate children, Zeus never seemed to learn. His insatiable lust was as constant as the northern star and just as predictable. And so, dear viewers, we bid adieu to Zeus, the god of thunder and undoubtedly the god of wandering eyes and unzipped togas.